Welcome to Diversity Conversations, where we engage in thought-provoking dialogue to identify leadership solutions to today's most challenging conflicts. Streamed live each week, Saturday 9:30 a.m. to 11 a.m. Hosted by Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Strategist and CEOs Eric Ellis and Tommy Lewis. Join us and add your voice to this engaging diversity conversation.
Good morning, Greater Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky, the United States, and the world. My name is Eric Ellis, and I'm the president and CEO of Integrity Development Corporation. And I'm joined this morning by my good friend and brother,
Tommy Lewis, president and CEO of Make It Plain Consulting. Good morning,
yes,
Eric.
Sir. Yes, sir. Tommy, how are you?
Oh, it's a great day. It's a great day, Eric. And for those who are not familiar with this tri-state area of Ohio, Kentucky, Indiana, it's cold.
Woo!
Winter is here, Eric, my friend. Good grief. Who turned on winter?
That's how I felt. I've been using my seat heaters, man, and it's just been crazy. But today is a little better. But man, we got some snow, all kind of crazy stuff happens here in Ohio. Tommy, how was your week, man?
My week was good, Eric. It was real good this week. I accomplished something for the first time, Eric, that in the last 20 years easily, I've never been able to do.
Okay.
So typically, we're responding to requests for proposals.
Mm-hmm.
And the requests for proposals are from different entities, and they give us typically 2 or 4 weeks to prepare our response.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of details that you have to put into the proposal. In fact, there's a format: cover letter, background of the company, scope of work, all that good stuff.
Right.
And so part of my perfectionism enables me to take about a week to do a proposal.
Okay. Start grinding it out.
Grind it out, piece by piece. I got other things I'm doing as well.
Right.
I was able to do one in one day. A 56-page proposal I got done in one day, including pricing.
Okay.
It was everything from start to finish. I started at 7:30 in the morning.
Right.
I finished at 7:30 at night.
Right.
At 3 o'clock, when myself and my COO took a look at the RFP,
Mm-hmm.
we realized that we could not electronically send and submit it. It had to be 4 hard copies and 2 copies of the proposal on flash drives. That's unheard of in today's world. Right. Organizations in Virginia, my COO says, "Are you going to drive to Virginia?" No, I'm not. And so finished up at 7:30, and I found a late night FedEx overnight that closed at 8:30 p.m. I got it over there at 8:15. I was real nice to the brother.
Right.
I need your miss, baby.
Right. Whatever it takes. What's the number?
He said, "Do you want it at 10 a.m. in the morning, 12 noon, or 5 p.m.?" It was due at 3.
Right.
10 a.m.
Right.
He stamped it. It'll be there at 10 a.m. in the morning, Virginia, the city. Man, I went home, grabbed the wife. We went to eat. Right. I've never experienced my ability to streamline a process with pressure.
Right.
Because I'm always eating about pressure.
Right.
And really think differently to get a better outcome. I identified a new process, Eric.
That's phenomenal, Tommy.
Of efficiency.
Right.
Just this week, Thursday.
Right.
After 20 years.
Right.
Man, I'm so excited. I'm jumping out my seat.
Right. You know, there's a term that we talk about the refiner's fire.
Yeah.
And I would say that that's what you were in, man, that sometimes when we're in the heat of battle, that it is the mother of inventions, innovations, progressing forward, man. And that's phenomenal, Tommy, because how many pages?
56, right? 56.
Congratulations, brother. Did you call to make sure they got everything?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
I did. So they said yes. It was kind of a little bit of a standard response. So not sure if they got it, but yeah, we got. But if they say that they received it, then I.
Right. So community, you'll see that we have a third wheel here. We're going to have him introduce himself. If you look very closely, you'll see
we kind of look alike.
You
So
see
this is my dad. My name is Ethan Ellis. He put the influencer. I use that term loosely. I just like to think of myself as a social commentator, and just someone with a lot of opinions.
Right. Well, I love that, and I'll tell you this: this is going to be, if it were in the Bible, it would be a red letter section. I believe that Ethan's my youngest son. I got 4 children, but as a parent, it's like Cracker Jacks box.
Yes.
When we were growing up, Tommy and I grew up with Cracker Jacks. You would eat all the Cracker Jacks, and then all of a sudden you find a prize, and you open it up to see what's in it. Children in many ways are that same way, that for the rest of his life, will keep unpacking some new, insights about the wisdom and in many ways the genius of Ethan. And I'm just grateful for the conversations that we've had, the way our relationship is turning, twisting, and growing. The other day we spent an hour and 41 minutes talking. We never talked that long. I've never talked that long to any of my kids. And it was a profound conversation. For those of you that are parents, understand, just like that commercial says, it's in there, that the things that you're sowing and then the things that God is placing in them, it is in there. And if we get concerned about what is the next generation going to be about, I'm going to say to you today that I think that you'll gain some things from listening to our conversation that might even help you with your children. And so, Ethan, if you were to sort of define yourself, who is Ethan Ellis? What is your purpose? How do you see yourself?
That's a very nuanced question. I'm trying not to give you too much of a loaded answer, but I think that I see myself as someone who's here with a purpose. I'm someone who strategically trying to be disciplined. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm someone with a clear vision, and I think that I'm here in order to execute that vision. And I think that I express that through multiple forms of media, through being a multi-hyphenate, being someone who works in multiple different creative areas and entities. Like, I'm getting my degree right now in communications.
Yes, sir.
But I'm also a professional songwriter, but I'm also a producer, and I'm also trying to start my own IP business at the same time. So it's like, I think God just has me wearing a whole bunch of hats and putting them on when it sees fit, So I'm someone who's relying on the discipline and stewardship in order to know when it's time to put on which one of those hats.
Okay.
And I would say, Ethan, that from my perspective, that I don't know why other people try to put us in one box, one slither.
Yeah.
When we can actually be all of that.
Right.
All of the blessings and the gifts that God gives us in our identity and who we are, not only our talents and our skills, but also what we are becoming as we are exposed to different things that trigger our interest and tap into and uncover a new path. We're all of that. And back in the day, we used to call it the Renaissance man and all that good stuff. But it's man. We're whole, right? Mankind. So thanks for sharing.
And there's 2 specific areas that we're going to talk to Ethan about. One is just his generation. He's a Generation Z young man, and I'll define that for you all. And we'll sort of talk about some of those characteristics and traits. And then I'm very interested in his perspective about religion and the perspective of his generation, because we're seeing a lot more millennials, Gen Zers that are sort of define themselves as unaffiliated as it relates to religion. But Gen Zers include individuals born approximately between 1997, 2012. It's the first generation to grow up with the internet, smartphones from a very young age. I know that to be true. They are, and it makes them sort of a true digital natives. And Ethan, you could talk about what that means. Their worldview, values, and behaviors have been shaped by the rapid pace of technological advancements, global connectivity and social shifts. So how do you define yourself as a Gen Zer? What does that mean to you, and how do you see that being different from others?
I think that being a part of Gen Z means that you were able to access not only so much information, but that we were kind of flooded with a myriad of different ideas and societal norms at a young age. So I think that in certain ways it made us very advanced and very good at having a wider spectrum and a more holistic view of the world.
Yeah.
But conversely, I feel like at the same time, it ends up starting, I think, the erasure of culture in society. Because now that you have access to so many different thinking patterns and ideas and thought processes, I think that it kind of eliminated or is slowly eliminating the need for community in terms of proximity or like geolocation, you know?
Yep.
So
I would agree with that. Right? You got me thinking already. Expand a little bit more on that, you know, moving toward erasing culture, right? Expand upon that and a deeper dive into that proximity.
yeah, I think that when you just look at the history of America, particularly because that's where we live, I think that culture is made by communities of people, and oftentimes it's made by circumstance. So I feel like the circumstances that we were all under were very similar to each other, especially Black people specifically. I don't need to go into the plight of the Black community, but I feel like in a way that forced us to be bonded together, to have similar experiences and shared ideations. But when you have people who see so much different content from all over the world and expansive worldviews, I think that it just begins to make people very individualistic in certain ways that was needed. I think it's also giving people who felt ostracized by larger communities a place to feel like they belong. But at the same time, I feel like it has made it so that people aren't as comfortable with talking to their neighbor as they are with someone 3,000 miles away.
Indeed. Yeah. Yep.
That's profound. So let me ask you this, Eden, now that you're older, this will be helpful to parents as well. As you reflect on your mother and I, sort of our giving you all access and freedom to technology, smartphones, and things like that, what's good in that? What's the usefulness in that? And what's the craziness in that? Because now that you're past being a young kid, every parent is wondering, what are kids doing on smartphones, and have we allowed this thing to babysit them that has opened up avenues and apertures into crazy things that end up impacting their sexuality and things like that? Can you share anything about that?
I can say that so far, it's just, I think that what people need to see phones and internet connectivity is as just, what's the word? I think it's just exposure. You know what I mean? It's information. And I think that you need to know how powerful it is. And I think that in the age where I came up, I'm 25 now, but in the age where we came up, it was very new and it was very unregulated. You know what I mean? There was no regulation at all. It was kind of just, you put something, it will be out there. It can be discovered by anyone at any time. I think now we're moving as a society towards having regulations on the internet. Like I know Instagram just started their teen accounts that parents can monitor and control the content settings of stuff that pops up on their feed,
right,
and things that come across their timeline. But I think that just we are kind of the demo version of the new society of coming up with that much access that quick.
Right. When we were young, Tommy, you know, if your father had Playboy magazines, you might come across them and then you out in the garage looking all through them. But in you all's generation, it's like if you're up late at night, curiosity can lead you into a lot of places. And how did you navigate getting in and out of those places? And what impact would you say that curiosity had on you and some of your peers?
I can say for me specifically, I mean, I was subject to the same things everyone else was. Like, I can remember, I think the first time I saw pornography was like at the age of what, 6, 7, you know, and seeing that much of that type of content at that young of an age with the power of the internet. It's not like it's just one bad DVD at your friend's parents' house. It's like an entire internet. So I think that for me and a lot of my peers at the time, it just gave us a very warped view of sexuality, what it's supposed to look like, how it's supposed to be experienced, how it's encountered, you know, and its beginning stages. And I just feel like so many of us just kind of got left in the dark when it came to that and are kind of trying to unpack it now. And I feel like people look at society nowadays and kind of ask, like, where was the disconnect? And I feel like that's kind of where it started for a lot of people, was seeing that, having no regulation. And if you didn't have parents who were on your back, like mine were about me, like if I were to view content in that way, then you can get lost. You know what I mean?
Yep. You can get lost. And how might parents or anyone, right? How might they disrupt some of that overwhelming exposure to content that the young person at that time may not be mentally prepared for?
I think that now, more than ever, now that we have more information about what can happen when it goes wrong, we need to use the tools and utilize our information now to set our children up for success. There are phone companies who make smartphones with internet connectivity that just do not have access to certain websites, to certain social media, and to certain apps that allow outside contact from people outside close proximity family groups and have tracking. And I think that it's now going to be parents' responsibility to seek that out and to find it. I think that it's something that we didn't have to think about before. So it's something that a lot of parents don't want to implement or don't think to implement. But that could be the difference between your kid growing up and having a strong sense of self and identity and having a very confused, very contradictory sense of self and identity.
Indeed.
Would you say that that's a part of that access is a part of what has driven so many young people to this metrosexual sort of fluid gender or sexual fluidity?
I think that sexuality is very personal, you know, so I can't speak to everyone's individual experience. How people find their sexuality is up to them. How they define it is up to them. But I do know that having that much of dysregulation, I don't know if that's where I made that up.
We like it.
But having that much
deregulation
of that type of content, I think just doesn't set people up for the best success when they're trying to find themselves in the first place. So even if you feel like you end up coming to yourself, it might not have been the same person that you would have come to without that access.
I got one more question for you, and then we're gonna leave this area alone, maybe.
Yeah.
But Ethan, let me ask you this. Would you say that young people that were being introduced to pornography out of curiosity at a young age, was it more likely that they would get sort of caught up in the digital world experience, or did you see a number of young people try to transfer or transition from the internet to bringing that into real life?
Like how so?
That sort of experiment with classmates, you know, at a young age, just trying to do what you saw on the internet at sleepovers and things like that. Or were people getting more lost in the privacy of the internet?
I think it's both.
Oh, yeah.
It's both. For some people, it's getting lost. For some people, it's trying it. Some people saw it and just knew to look away.
Yeah.
But for a lot of people, especially, I mean, let's just be real and be candid. Children need to be taught about sexuality.
Right.
At a very young age.
Right.
Because I'm going to tell you, by the age of 6,
you're already lost. They're behind.
Kids are already, they're already talking about it. And let's be honest, nobody's looking at their 6-year-old like they're hearing about this type of stuff. You just think it's unnecessary. But you would rather have that information come from you first so they have a guideline before it comes, because it's going to come to them. And the younger they get, the quicker it's getting, the earlier it's becoming. So I think that we need to do more as a generation of parents to make that conversation less taboo and to make it less awkward. I think that it's an essential part of the human experience that we need to have guidelines for. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's good word, because as you're sharing, Ethan, I'm thinking of my own background just very quickly, where my mother, who was a healthcare professional for 35 years, she taught me and my sisters about sexuality and sex from really a scientific and biological perspective. They were just facts. When you look at when you're experiencing this psychologically, emotionally, sexually, here's what it is. Yep. Here's what the body. I remember my mother opening a book, an anatomy book, right? And really just talking through this.
Right.
I was exposed to my first experience at 9 years old. 9. And so it was very natural. Then I got, me and my friends got caught, and we went to the principal's office, and my father came, and my father, he had talked to me like he had sex before. I got to slow that down.
Right.
It was not shaming.
Right.
There was no blaming. There was no
Right.
victimizing. He was like, get ready, bruh. Get ready. Get ready for everything. Get ready for the emotional attachment you may have in thinking about it, right? The psychological kind of meltdown or disappointment when your thoughts do not realize into something. And all of that energy that I particularly had, I end up exercising it through athletics. That my mother and my father told me those hormones, you cannot stop. Right? They happen. Whatever's driving you to this, whatever, it's going to happen. Be careful. And they gave me options. Right? Go down this rabbit hole. The Playboy books, father, he had them. Right? My mother was like, I know your father has them, right? But you're the youngest, me. They told me you're the youngest. Your sisters were here before you. How do you think they got here? It was a lot of scientific. So our family was very, I think, immediate nuclear family.
Right.
Very forthright in our conversations. And that's why I'm excited about this conversation, as your father shares with me the excitement that he had with a kind of a breakthrough conversation with you just last evening. Like the breakthrough of, and I'll close with this, because this is what it reminds me of, Eric. One of the most proudest moments that my father shared that I gave him is when I was able to teach him about me. Yep. So hold up, Dad. I know you have a particular view of me.
Right.
Here's who I am.
Right.
And after this conversation, I'm going to go back to who I am, regardless of your view of me. And my father said, you've arrived. Be your own person. You've arrived. Ethan, where are you now as a Gen Zer, as an individual, with your relationship with your parents, your sibling, and the world? Where?
In terms of my parents, I can say that I am moving towards a very transparent relationship with them. I think they were trying to juggle having 4 children and a major business on their hands. And just having the pressure of that and all the other outside affiliations that they had, networks and organizations that they were a part of.
Right.
It was kind of just like they were doing this all the time.
Stereotypical relationships, all kind of
So it's like everyone's just trying to kind of stay afloat. And with 4 neurodivergent children, 2 neurodivergent parents, you know what I'm saying? It kind of put us in a place to where it was kind of like everyone was trying to juggle and keep this giant ship from floating away. And it's just like the mental responsibility. I think the older that I've gotten, the things that have fallen through the cracks in terms of the relationship with my parents, as all parents have, some things are going to slip through the cracks. I think that growing up and realizing the weight of that helped me contextualize the relationship that I had with them. Because I feel like for a while it was something that I resented. Like, how did this fall through the cracks? And how did I miss this? And now when I look at the amount of responsibility that they both had to carry at ages not much older than I am now. Because I think, what did you guys started your family at like 28, 29, 30?
Exactly.
That's only a couple years older than I am now. And if I tried to have the type of family that they had in a couple years, I would fall apart. I just would crush. I would crumble under the weight, or I would just need a whole bunch more support than they had. So I think growing up helped me see the world from their lens and actually gain a very fond respect of what they were able to achieve.
Right. We're going to get to Dr. Gibbs' question, but I would say, Ethan, thank you for that. And I would say to our community, it's the reason why you have to have God in the midst of your relationship, because you're not going to be able to cover all the bases, period. Ethan has accurately described all the things that were happening, all the balls that are being juggled. And literally at the end of the night, you're just sort of skidding into home base and saying, oh, we got through another day. And there is an impact of that. But the way that you avoid the wholesale negative impact of that is to have somebody else bigger than you sort of helping to navigate that space. And Judy and I both have a strong relationship with God, and we've had to depend on that greatly over these years. Ethan, Dr. Gibbs, we grew up together. We used to go to a church camp meeting called West Middlesex, Pennsylvania. That's where all my mother, grandmother, great-grandmother, all of them went there, a Black church camp in Pennsylvania. And so we grew up together there. And she's asking you a question. You dealt with it a little bit, but just see if there's anything else in there that you want to add.
How does a Gen Z unpack all that they saw, and how do they reach out to healthy resources and healthy adults to help?
I think this is a two-part question. I think the first part is, how does Gen Z unpack all that they saw? And I'm just going to leave it there for a second. I think it's very it's very nuanced. I think that some of Gen Z has been able to unpack it by going into forms of self-discovery, deep forms of self-discovery at a much earlier age. And I think that for the other half, and for an overwhelming population of Gen Z, they are just struggling. They got lost, and I'm not just talking about pornography. I'm just saying they got lost in the controversial messaging. That's something that I am just now at 25 teaching myself how to do, is how to categorize the content that I'm watching. Because
big statement there.
You have to learn how to categorize the content that you're looking at while you're looking at it. Because I think that, I don't know, when you meet a person, their intentions are very clear. Their body language is very clear. Humans weren't naturally made to look at videos. That wasn't a part of it. We're not evolved for that. You know what I mean? We can understand it and we appreciate it because it's entertaining, but we weren't made to see that. I think there's a lot of body language that's taken away. And when you look at the first movies, like I think one of the first movies ever made was people seeing a train come into the station.
Yeah.
And it was about 2 minutes long, and the entire audience jumped at this very
come on, Ethan.
At this very low resolution, poor quality black and white motion picture of a train. An entire audience, about 60 people, were jumping in their seats like this, shrouding in fear, And I think that we've been able to adapt really well, but I think that now we're seeing the implications of what happens when you don't see natural human body language for so long. Like even when I think about
Man.
the type of content that we see nowadays, it's not always narrative based at all. It can just be a series of montages, or it can be content that has no person in the view at all, and it's just a floating screen with words and someone doing a voiceover. So that takes away body language, that takes away context, and I think that it's very confusing for people to try to navigate relationships with this much content. Yeah, that's how it into it.
That was incredible. Community, please, please, please rewind the tape on this and listen to what Ethan said, not just at that moment, but prior to. Because one of the things that came up in addition to this question, that I believe that not just Gen Z, but all of our generations that are exposed to such content may be at times exposed to toxicity, just pure, unadulterated toxicity.
Right.
Not only in the words, not only in the behaviors, not only in the kind of reactions, but also in the energy. So big if this is true, that we are being exposed to heightened and super elevated toxicity, and the generation absorbs it, or the individual absorbs it, how might we again disrupt it or unpack it? Because it's showing up.
Question I was going to ask.
It's showing up.
Anxiety
in real life, anxiety,
mental health
stress,
issues,
mental health issues, internal violence and external violence. Right? How do we disrupt it, or unpack it, or redirect?
I think that it starts with education. We need to teach, I believe, at the federal level, we need to implement classes that teach about the errors of social media. I think that needs to be a government implemented rule or law that needs to be taught in the schools. There needs to be a period of time that's set aside for learning how to navigate the world that these children exist in, because it just isn't the same. And I do think that the models that children are set up with right now in school, just we see how it does not match their lived experience. I mean, kids are leaving school and they don't know how to pay their taxes.
Come on.
They were there for like what, 12, 14 years. They don't know how to pay their taxes. And they learned about the Pythagorean theorem. And I mean, and the only reason we're not straying away from that model is because it sets people up for the other classes that are offered by the university. And if those classes become invaluable, then now colleges aren't making as much money. So I think that we need more people, more citizens advocating for the type of education that these children are getting.
So let me ask you this, Ethan. So as our generation, we hear social media influence, and it's like a big thing. It just this blob. Can you break this down for us by giving any examples of how social media messages, some of the most significant ones that you recall growing up, that impacted you either positively or negatively? And what did you see as the mindset of your generation as they were seeking to post things? What was the activity about? What was the emotional things that they were trying to connect with?
Like just
So I want to start with, remember any incident where you were negatively either talked about on social media, something that had an impact on you.
Does it have to be personal, or is it cultural, or is it both?
I'd say if you could think about it personally, that may be helpful to people. But if you could think about it generationally and just what happens, because we hear social media criticism and that kind of thing, but we really don't know. It's not nuanced enough for us to understand what kinds of things are people being exposed to that are affecting them.
I could say just at a young age, one of the biggest events that anyone else can remember is like Trayvon Martin and what that looked like, and then again with many other Black men and women. And I'd be remiss not to mention Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, because that's probably what was most impactful for the children of this generation is probably the George Floyd incident. I think that not only do we have to experience that at a cultural level in our homes and around our dinner tables and with our families and with our friends, but now we have to see it replayed over and over and over and over again. And I probably saw that video of George Floyd probably over 70 times. You know what I mean? And it's not like a news cycle to where it comes on maybe once every, at least once a day or a couple times a day. You know what I mean? Like in the regular style of like a conversation or something, where it's like we talk, we move across, we talk about the forecast, we talk about the sports, we talk about this, and then in the late news, we make it the top story and then talk about other things as well. It's like, no, you just scroll and see it back to back to back to back. You see the video here, you see it there, you see everyone's commentary on it.
Right.
You see people actively losing their minds on social media, tweeting videos of people screaming and crying into their phones, and posting that online. And that is so damaging to our mental health to see that so much, because you see people who took to it super hard. You see people who didn't believe it. And at the same time, you see so much content from people saying, well, you don't know the type of person he was, right after you see a video of someone screaming and crying because they couldn't even take looking at it anymore. And then right next to it, you'll see someone saying, well, what type of person was he? And you're like, what? I just saw someone crying their eyes out. And now I'm seeing people politicize the death. And then it makes you hyper realize that, oh my gosh, my Black life could be politicized. It can be made partisan. There can be a sort of judgment on the value of my life.
Indeed.
And it's based on the opinions of people who did not experience it. And it's just, I don't know, it makes you realize how transactional a Black life can be. And that's now speaking about my personal experience. And how little people can care about you. And seeing that back to back, right next to seeing people crying and rallying. I do want to say also, I don't want to focus on all the negative. I do think that there were a lot of people who rallied, and we saw a lot of people trying to figure it out. I mean, you had like little white kids posting black squares on their Instagram for Black Lives Matter. They're posting black squares, and it's like, was I supposed to see that and feel supported? Like, what are we talking about? And then once Asian people started getting attacked, some people were posting yellow squares. And it's like, what are we doing? What are we doing? So I don't know.
About the counts.
I was like, thanks. Or when people was tweeting, Black people, I see you, I stand with you. That tweet did nothing for me. So if you tweeted that, I'm sorry, I love you, I appreciate you. But it felt more like we were watching people actively gather themselves after an event that traumatic. And I don't know, it sets you up for failure to see that much.
So let me ask you another question. This is oh my God, we could talk for a day about just that alone. So where are we in your generation's mind that you said something that was powerful, and we just assumed that the kids had to get up the next day and keep living? We never thought about how traumatic that was to be watching these things over and over and over again, and then how that influences your expectation, your hopefulness for the future. As we look at traits for Gen Zers, it's the digital natives, they value authenticity and individuality, socially and politically engaged, mental health awareness. Those are things that your generation is concerned about. What is the way, in your view, what is the way forward for us? You said that you saw how transactional people are and can be around race and Black lives. So what is your view of how we make it as a people today, seeing where we are right now, given that transactional piece? What do you all see as the formula for success? Is it possible that we that this generation won't do better than its parents, or what's to have us hopeful about the future?
I think it's certain that this generation won't do better than their parents. I mean, we were hit by a massive blow. I think there's no doubt in my mind that this generation is going to do much worse than their parents, just because we live in a completely different society. This is just as influential as like the industrial age.
Yes, sir.
So with something this sort of traumatic happening, or I don't want to call it traumatic, this with the shift this big, I think that like this is just the demo trial period for the rest of what society is going to look like. And we're actively trying to figure out technology is moving faster than we can even comprehend. So I think that more than anything, we need to try to figure out what our life looks like outside of that context and remind us that there's a life outside of social media, outside of technology, because it's always going to move quicker than you. It's always going to change quicker than you. It's always going to have messaging that's contradictory to what you feel and what you believe. So I think that more than anything, we need to exercise restraint. And I think that's the biggest thing that we can do right now. I've been taking mental health breaks. During the current election, I was just taking mental health breaks because there was just so many people with so many opinions. And it was just overwhelming.
You know what? Last thing. I noticed you do something yesterday. I was talking about something, and I think that something had either a negative sort of surrounding to it. And I saw you moving to pivot. And I was like, and I think that's a very good sort of boundary setting safety mechanism. You cannot allow yourself to be pulled into something that's seeking to shift your emotions when you don't find that that's going to be helpful.
Yeah.
Is that something that you do?
I do that a lot.
Absolutely, bro.
I had to learn how to do that to protect myself, because I've seen what that hasn't looked like when you take agency over your emotions. When you don't take agency over that and you allow people to control the way you think, feel, and believe, that's contrary to your ethos.
Yes.
Or to the type of day that you know you need to have.
Yes.
Then it's your responsibility to advocate for yourself.
I am learning so much about specifically my son. What you're saying, my son. A lot has been going on in his 18 years, and his ability to shift and pivot, like you said, like the ethos. I literally am in amazement of his skill set and in awe. And at the same time, I am unaware of that skill. He has something like you.
Right.
Has something. I'm like,
I watched it and I was like, that's good.
what is happening?
Right.
And I will say this, that I believe the older generations have found themselves severely perplexed in Gen Z's ability to navigate and build their own reality.
Yeah.
No matter what it is, to navigate and build, because the previous generations were truly instructed on how to behave by the generation before that.
Right.
And so that instruction was potentially, okay, silent generation, here's how we're going to operate out of the industrial age, right? Out, etc. And you get to work early, get to work early, if you're on time, you're late. All these good things, right? And either their children said, I agree, or they said, I don't agree, right? And they rebelled. Then we move into the 70s, etc. Once again, I agree, kumbaya, this is my culture, this is my style, or I'm refusing and pushing back. Through protest, right? Be it psychological protest or physical protest, we were starting to kill one another. Right? And then we moved into a generation that, you know what? I don't want to publicly say that I agree or disagree. I'm going to articulate my lived experience through the arts, music, entertainment. So we have the 80s and 90s that are heavily driven by music, entertainment, arts, and spoken word, all that good stuff. And really bucking the system of the status quo.
Yeah.
So I go to this statement that you made earlier again, that as you began to unpack it around this kind of blurring of culture. If we think about in the work that we do, think about three buckets. One, people. All the people is us. That's the who. Process is the what. It's the process, procedure, practice. Culture is the how. So Ethan, you were talking about that the blurring of culture is really
That's heavy. That was so heavy.
Is how are we
Right.
going to do what we do? It is blurred.
Right.
We're not
Right.
doing it based on the previous
Right.
generation.
Right. Right.
This Gen
Right.
Z is
Not
saying,
even work.
Right. Right.
it's saying
Right.
we may do it or we may not.
He's helping us to understand the results of the election as well, that people are not simply locked in their cultural experience, or their cultural experience is much broader because now they're exposed to a lot of other cultures, and so they'll pick up on some of those values.
Profound.
Let me pivot you now, Ethan, into the space of religion. The research says that 33% of Black millennials and 28% of Gen Zers are religiously unaffiliated compared to 5% of the silent generation. Why do you think that is? And what is your relationship like with God? How did that become more personal for you?
I can say in terms of our generations, back to my previous point of just there's too much access, too much controversial messaging in order to see Christianity lived out. I think it's very rare that I see Christian experience lived out in culture. It's so rare. It's something I had to personally seek out and find.
Mhm.
And even doing that, it's still hard to find. It's still hard to see it be exhibited. So I think that
What do you mean by that?
it's like I have to purposely go out and follow Christian pages all the time just in order to see that. Because if I didn't go out and follow them, I wouldn't see Christian morals, I wouldn't see Christian value systems, and I wouldn't see Christian messaging. And even if I were to see it one or two times, it would be so shrouded in different ideations that I think that what we keep forgetting is that Christianity is a culture as well as religion. It's something that is fully immersive. It requires your dreams. It requires your stewardship. It requires your discipline, and it requires your friendships.
Hold up. Oh, this is so deep. This is so deep. Hold up. Let me ask you another question. Tommy, jump right in here, Emperor. So you're saying to me that Christians who find themselves at praise and worship on Sunday, having a great time and loving their community of believers are invisible in the world.
Yeah.
That they literally are invisible in the world. You don't even see them unless you take a microscope, a magnifying glass, and you're going out here with a specific intent to find them. You're not going to experience them.
No.
And that should be alarming to Christians, that we are so invisible in our influence that the world will never encounter us unless they somehow are intentionally seeking to look for us.
Yeah, they're hidden now. It's so hidden. When I mean, you think about phrases like "God bless America" and how influenced by Christianity that our society was. It's been kind of completely eviscerated. And I don't think it's just been eviscerated for the fact that people just don't like Christianity.
Yeah.
I think that what we're seeing is
Judgmental.
people don't like structure.
Okay.
They really don't.
Okay.
And Christianity requires a certain discipline and structure in order for you to exist in its context. That people don't want to give up their agency to live the life in the way that they see fit. So it's like, why would we subscribe as a nation to submitting something, to giving something up? You know what I'm saying? Because that is completely contradictory to the human flesh, you know what I mean? And human desire. Human desire and discipline for something that isn't immediately satisfying or gratifying for you are two conflicting messages. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Especially when you
Yeah.
think about the intersection with that and consumerism.
Indeed. On the other side of that coin, the proverbial separation of church and state.
Yeah.
And so you may have a particular state that's saying we're going to bring Christianity back into
Bible's in the classroom.
the school. Right? However, the Christianity that we're bringing back into the school is the Christianity that I know and I believe in, and in some cases I interpret. So it's not as much of what I'm seeing of the global universal concepts and definition of Christianity, right? It's more of a secular and sometimes selfish lens of view on about Christianity. For example, we go back to slavery in those times after the transatlantic slave trade or during the transatlantic slave trade, where those enslaved Africans who landed on this continent or who were brought to this continent were kind of instructed about Christianity. And some of those enslaved Africans were from Ethiopia, where Christianity was around before Christ.
Yeah, they have Orthodox Christians.
Orthodox, yes. And so now you have a dominant culture telling the non-dominant culture about their origins in a way that's not aligned with them.
Right.
And so the non-dominant culture says,
I got one.
that's not right.
Line up.
In fact, that's a lie. Dominant culture keeps beating that information over their head as if it's a social media stream, one after another, after another, after another. Right? So my point that I'm making, or my question I'm asking, is when we think about Christianity, my question is, whose Christianity are we talking about?
In the context of what?
The context of who's giving the narrative about what Christianity is.
Right.
Who's interpreting what Christianity is.
Right. And even instead, number one, it's invisible. So
Indeed.
in the real world, I mean, we just don't see it. And I suspect that means that people aren't then understanding the nuances.
Yeah.
If they're not seeing it at all.
And Christianity, I want to say, it's an anti-desire religion.
It is.
It's anti-desire. You know what I'm saying? And desire it's the number one driving force, in my opinion, of consumerism. You know what I'm saying? And
whoa!
content is built on people trying to sell things. They're trying to buy people's attention. They're trying to buy people's times. They're trying to attach themselves to people's desires. So when you have an anti-desire religion and ethos competing with consumerism that is saying, I need your desire.
Yep.
I need your lust after my product, after my business, after my corporate affiliation, in order for you to want to be a part of this. Christianity cannot coexist in that environment when that is the culture.
So you're going to unlock this for us. That's so thank you for that. That's huge. But now I'm going to ask you to take that same understanding and help to inform us, what is it about Christianity and Christ that has been able to capture your interest and your strong desire? Because I agree with you that they're up against, it's an anti-desire, but I'm not sure if it's an anti-desire. I think it's an anti-worldly desire, but there's something deeper that I think your generation is looking for. That whole authenticity, that whole piece is locked up in there. But walk us through, what is it that is drawing you to a genuine, authentic relationship with Christ?
Okay. And by that I meant anti-innate desire.
Yes. I got
The human flesh is compromised.
Yeah.
It just is.
That's right.
You know, so, and that's why we need to be taught about Christianity. You know what I mean? You're not just gonna stumble upon it and then end up living your best life without having the tools, you know. But I think what's been able to capture me and keep me in the religion that I chose of Christianity is seeing it as my truth. Christianity for me is my compass. I think it's given me the most what's the word? It's given me the most peace of mind.
Yeah.
It's made the most sense to me. It's helped me navigate this world the best, better than any other ideology, better than desire, better than follow your heart, better than the concept of manifestation. I think Christianity has just set me up for the most success in order to live my life in the healthiest way I know how. So I think also, I mean, you have to think, I grew up in church so long. Just like I had to go to church almost every other day for years just to maybe think about choosing to follow the religion. So you got to think about these people who just never
Tell the
get
world,
here.
Ethan.
They
Tell
just,
the
I mean,
world.
it's just, I don't want to say it's over for them, but I'm just saying that it's like you gotta look at it as a sinking ship unless you decide to intervene. And I think that that I, even after all of that influence from an early age into my adolescence and early adulthood, it was something that I had to experience for myself eventually, you know. And I think the experience of choosing a Christian life helped me to live my healthiest life. And that is what has kept me here.
Give me an example of a conversation that you're having with God that might elevate for the community an understanding of how personal your walk is.
Conversation with God usually looks like me asking him about either an issue I'm dealing with or for advice for somewhere where I feel like I don't understand. You know what I mean? I can ruminate a lot. I think I'm a very deep thinking person in my private time. And I categorize the way I think often. If I'm thinking a certain type of thought often, then I start to think, what is this line of thinking? Like, let's say, let me put it back into the attention because I don't want to lose people. Let's say I'm thinking a whole bunch of contradictory thoughts. Like, I want to be a good person, but I sin all the time. It's like, and my heart is after people, but I cuss people out on the highway when I get cut off. Or I want to be faithful, but I also love or lust after my desires innately and strongly. So it's like, how can all these things coexist? And the conversations I have with God allow me to unpack that and allow me to separate what are thoughts that should pass through me and what are things that I should hold on to so that I can build a narrative for my life.
Last question. So I like that, Ethan. Thank you for that answer. Are there people in the earth that can make you feel as comfortable to engage them around some of those conversations? I would suspect that the majority of people are unsafe, and your mind says it's not worth opening up that to them because it's only going to expose me. But are there people that you've encountered that are safe enough for you to take some of the conversations that you're praying to God and you're comfortable engaging them around that as well? And what does that criteria look like?
I think that even in the Bible, you see that the character of God is exhibited a lot of times before the name of God. When God presented himself, it wasn't, I am Jesus Christ. I mean, there were certain times where he had to announce his authority so that people would understand. But a lot of times it was just him exhibiting his character, showing his heart. And it says even in the Bible that I just put this verse up the other day. I don't waste too much time trying to find it. But I think that love is an action. You know what I'm saying? So it's like the responsibility of having those types of conversations with people aren't always with our words. And I think that's what we need to remember. We need to stop beating people over the head with the name of Jesus and start beating people over the head with the character of Jesus. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that is the difference between that church and state.
Yeah.
That is it. It's the character of Jesus. I think that you shared a lot today that was, for me, Ethan, very insightful about the world, about my life through your lens specifically, and through the lens of a person that has fairly no idea of my reality. I was able to see myself through your words that it's always in atonement, it's in alignment to truth. Truth is that we're all on this journey. Truth is that we, as human beings, we don't know where it ends.
Yeah.
We don't. We don't know when it ends. We don't know when it ends and maybe begins again. But what we do know, for those who are cognizant and reflective on their journey, is that we're on to something. We're on to something. And that's where I think mentally we get into literally the great debate. It's the great debate of civility. It's the great debate.
So you're going to close us out with this, Ethan. I'm going to ask you to sort of speak to our community of parents. And I'd like you to sort of think about your future and what you believe God has created you to become. What are things that parents can do to sort of add value to you finding your purpose? And what are some things that you'd say parents sometimes can avoid in order to make sure that they're not interrupting your ability to find your purpose?
In terms of thinking with their children?
Yes, them with their children, us with you, just parents are always looking for those answers. I find that parents have a lot to say, some helpful, some not helpful. And so I'm asking for some perspective around it.
I think parents need to listen a lot more to the experience of their children, because there's no advice without context. There isn't. So much of the Bible is just context. It's just, this was the time, these were the people, this was the place. It's not just a miracle happened, then another miracle, and then the world was made. It was like they tell you how it was made, how many days it took, where they were at, and the context is so important so that we can figure out why he did what he did. So I think that I'm paralleling that to the relationship of parents with children. The context of having knowledge about your child's life will help you to give them better advice, because you're giving them advice based off of your experience when you don't listen to your children. And that is not advice that will work for their life, because that's not their experience. So you need to listen and take into account what they're saying, and then contextualize that if you are a Christian parent in a Christian context. If you're not a Christian parent, then you need to contextualize it in the way that you see the world, still based off of the way your child has lived life and like what they've gone through. You know what I'm saying? So that would be my advice.
Well, and what I would say to you is that that's huge. It's easier said than it is done, because the value in life is time, space. And so parents oftentimes, when there's a view that there may be a limited amount of time, they're literally trying to suck up all the oxygen to share with you what they think is the best stuff for you to hear. And it's foolishness, but they don't want to listen enough, because when you're saying things, especially if those things are counter what they believe and their agenda, then they're not trying to give any space to that perspective, because they believe this is so critical that I download to you everything that I believe. And I think that's a flaw. I think it's a flaw. It's a mistake. It's ADD response. I think that sometimes we don't want to take the patience to listen, to learn, to understand. But without all those things, Tommy and I learned it in business. Yeah. When we first started doing business, we went into sale. All we did was talk about what we do. Yeah. And then we learned, like 3/4 of the way through, that they said something now about what they needed that was totally different than what we were. And if I'd have known that, I could have adjusted my pitch. And so this is part of what you're saying. You're saying that if you want to help me best, spend time learning me more.
I do think as we close that what you said, Ethan, is important for parents to listen to. I think that part of good advice is being a consultant. And what does that mean? A consultant offers up suggestions. Here are a myriad of things you should consider. If you're customizing your advice to the person based on your knowledge and experience from their lens, you hear what they're saying and their experience, and then you offer up, a small selection of things. The tough thing is, if you go down this path, from my experience, here's where it's going to end up. If you go down this path, per my experience, and what I'm knowing from you, you may end up at this place. As a parent, I don't want you to go down that path. Also, as a consultant, let me sit back and give you the option and let you decide.
Right.
Because some of your best learning is going down that path.
Absolutely.
When you bump and fall and hit, and then you come out of the pain, suffering, and turmoil with renowned wisdom and experience. It's not always, you don't always learn by winning all the time.
Right.
Yeah.
You have success, everything I touch turns to gold. Right, it's might. Yeah, it's not that at all. The Bible talks about those trials and tribulations, right? It talks about it all the time. Every spiritual book talks about it. And so, as a parent and as parents in the community, I think it will be apropos for all of us, regardless of the age of our children, to understand the child or the children or young man, young woman, young person where they are, and then offer up things. There has to be some cognizant distance too. At the end of the day, have a good go of it.
Right. Because sometimes you're going to find a new innovation.
Yep.
You went a path that I said don't go.
And that's it.
Well, here's the final word, Ethan. Dr. Gibbs has said the world and church needs more people like Ethan, who is transparent, educated, and loving.
Thank you.
Ethan, you want to close us out by responding to your community member and saying your final words.
First of all, Dr. Rhonda, I just want to say thank you so much, and I appreciate that. And that doesn't go without being noticed. So I appreciate your comment. And I think just in closing, I can just say that I don't know really how to round this up. I think that it's up for you to take from this whatever you felt like was necessary, and I hope that it helps you on your journey. That's it.
All right, community, take care of each other, take care of yourselves, and we'll see you next week for another installment of Diversity Conversations.